The courtroom was filled with the usual noise of papers shuffling, chairs moving, and people whispering. It was a busy day, and everyone expected a quick and easy case. At the center of it all stood a black man, wearing simple clothes that looked out of place among the polished suits of lawyers and officials. He had no lawyer standing beside him, no one to guide him. He was completely alone. The judge leaned back in his chair, a smirk forming on his face. He looked down at the man and then at the prosecutor, who was already preparing his files with confidence. The judge chuckled and said, "So, you think you can stand here without a lawyer? You believe you can face the law all by yourself?" His words were sharp, dripping with mockery, and the courtroom laughed along with him. People in the gallery shook their heads. Some whispered, "This man is finished. He will lose everything." Others laughed quietly, treating it like a show. The prosecutor smiled proudly, certain of an easy victory. To everyone inside that courtroom, this case was already over before it had even begun. But the man at the center did not react the way they expected. He did not lower his head in shame. He did not beg for mercy. Instead, he stood straight, calm, and quiet. His eyes showed no fear. His lips curved into a small, confident smile, as if he knew something no one else in the room understood. The judge's laughter grew louder. "You are wasting this court's time," he said, banging his gavel once. "Do you think this is a game? Do you think you are as smart as the lawyers who studied for years?" His tone was heavy with arrogance, and everyone nodded in agreement. The man finally spoke. His voice was calm, deep, and steady. "Your Honor," he said softly, "the law is not about who has the most expensive lawyer. The law is about truth, and today I will speak that truth." His words made the courtroom fall silent for a brief moment. People glanced at one another, surprised that he dared to speak with such confidence. But soon the whispers returned, filled with laughter and doubt. "He is just trying to act brave," someone said. "Wait until the prosecutor crushes him." The prosecutor stepped forward, slamming his file on the table with a grin. "Your Honor, this will not take long," he announced proudly. "This man clearly has no understanding of how the system works. He is no lawyer, no scholar, nothing but a fool." The judge nodded in agreement, still smiling, while the black man simply folded his hands and waited. From the very beginning, the courtroom atmosphere was filled with humiliation. Every word, every laugh, every stare was against him. He was treated as if he did not belong there, as if justice was not for him. Yet, despite all of this, he remained silent and steady, like a man waiting for the right moment to strike. The judge continued to mock him. "Tell me," he said sarcastically, "did you study law at night while working at a grocery store? Or maybe you read some books at the library and thought you could beat the system?" The courtroom laughed again, but this time the man did not flinch. His eyes stayed locked on the judge, unshaken. There was something unusual about his calmness. It was not the silence of fear, but the silence of strength. He had come prepared, not with wealth or power, but with something far greater: knowledge and truth. The people in the gallery could not see it yet. The prosecutor could not sense it, and the judge surely did not believe it. But the man standing there was not weak. He was not a fool. He was waiting patiently for the chance to reveal his hidden strength. And when that moment arrived, the same judge who laughed at him would be forced to sit in stunned silence. The same crowd that mocked him would soon realize they had witnessed something unforgettable. The stage was set. The humiliation was heavy. But behind the quiet eyes of the man, there was a storm ready to change everything. The air in the courtroom was heavy with arrogance. The prosecutor stood tall, adjusting his suit as if the outcome had already been written in his favor. His confidence was unshakable. He looked at the judge with a grin, then turned his gaze toward the black man, who still stood calmly. "Hands folded in front of him, Your Honor," the prosecutor began. His voice loud and sharp. "This man is not only foolish for representing himself, but he is also wasting the court's valuable time. He thinks he can challenge the system, but all he will do is embarrass himself further."
Ow.
The judge chuckled, shaking his head. "You are right. Let's finish this quickly. I have no interest in hearing long speeches from someone who doesn't even know the basics of law." His words were harsh, but they carried a tone of amusement, like a teacher mocking a student. The gallery erupted in whispers again. "He's done for," one woman whispered. "Why didn't he just get a lawyer?" Another man added. Some people laughed openly, treating the entire scene as entertainment. The black man, however, stood still, his face calm, almost unreadable. He didn't respond to the insults, nor did he show anger. He simply opened a worn brown folder he carried and began flipping through neatly organized papers. His fingers moved slowly, as though every page mattered, as though he already knew where this battle was headed. The prosecutor smirked at the sight. "Look at him, Your Honor," he said mockingly. "He brought papers from his kitchen drawer and thinks he can argue with me. This'll be over in minutes." The judge leaned forward, amusement shining in his eyes. "Do you even know the rules of evidence?" he asked the man in a mocking tone. "Do you know what is admissible and what is not? Or did you just learn a few big words and think you could play lawyer today?" The man finally raised his eyes, his calm voice carrying across the courtroom. "I know enough, Your Honor," he said softly. "Enough to show the truth. Enough to prove what is real." His tone was steady, and his words carried a quiet strength. The room fell silent for a brief moment. But then the prosecutor laughed loudly, shaking his head. "This is ridiculous. He has no idea what he's doing. I could destroy his argument with my eyes closed." He opened his own thick file, filled with polished documents and highlighted notes. With a proud smile, he began presenting his first point, waving his papers in the air. "Your Honor, here is clear evidence against him. Documents signed and sealed. Witnesses who have already given statements. This case is simple." The judge nodded in agreement. Yes. This should not take long." The prosecutor placed the documents on the desk and looked at the man. "Do you have anything to say? Or will you finally admit you were guilty?" The man's eyes were sharp now. He stepped forward, holding one of his papers. His movements were not rushed, not desperate. They were calm, deliberate, almost too calm for someone standing alone against the system. He placed the paper gently before the judge. "This," he said quietly, "is a detail you seem to have overlooked." The judge frowned and glanced at the paper, almost dismissively at first, but then his eyes narrowed. His smile faded slightly. There was something written there, something the prosecutor had ignored. The prosecutor leaned forward, confused. "What is this?" he asked. The man looked directly at him, his voice still calm. "It's part of the same law you were trying to use against me, but you did not read it completely. You chose only the pieces that suited your case." The gallery began to murmur. Some leaned forward, curious now. For the first time, the judge stopped laughing. His fingers tapped against the bench nervously. The prosecutor tried to brush it off. "This means nothing. He is just twisting words." But the man shook his head. "No, I am only showing what the law actually says." The tension in the courtroom grew heavy. The laughter that had filled the room minutes earlier began to fade. People looked at each other, whispering, "Did he just find something the prosecutor missed?" The judge cleared his throat, suddenly uncomfortable. He had laughed at the man only moments ago, but now, even he could not ignore the weight of those words. The prosecutor quickly flipped through his documents, searching desperately, but his smile was gone. His confidence cracked. The man's calm, steady presence was starting to change the direction of the battle. For the first time, the courtroom realized this was not going to be as simple as they thought. The courtroom was no longer filled with laughter. The atmosphere had shifted. What began as a spectacle where everyone mocked the lone black man was now turning into something unexpected. The prosecutor, who only moments ago stood proud and confident, now shuffled his papers nervously. The judge, once smirking, leaned forward with a tightened jaw. The man at the center of it all remained calm. He stood like a pillar, unmoved by the whispers around him. He raised another paper from his folder and held it carefully. His voice was clear, but steady. "Your Honor, you laughed at me earlier. You thought I was unprepared, but I have read every line of this law, not once, but many times. And what I hold here proves that the prosecutor has misled this court. The gallery gasped. The words struck like thunder in the silent hall. People leaned closer, curious now, no longer amused. The prosecutor forced a laugh. "This is nonsense. He doesn't know what he's saying." But his tone carried a trace of fear. The judge tapped his gavel lightly, his eyes narrowing on the man. "Show me exactly what you are referring to," he ordered. The man stepped forward, placing the paper directly before the judge. It was a section of the very same law the prosecutor had used against him, but with one key difference. The prosecutor had quoted only the parts that worked in his favor. While ignoring a clause that completely changed the meaning, the judge read silently, his eyes moving line by line. His smirk faded completely. For a moment, the courtroom seemed to freeze. Even the sound of breathing felt heavy in the silence. Finally, the judge looked up, his voice lower than before. "Is this correct?" he asked, turning to the prosecutor. The prosecutor's face went pale. He stuttered, "Well, it's not relevant, Your Honor." The man's calm voice cut through the tension. "Not relevant? It is the heart of the matter. You presented half the law to make me appear guilty, but the other half clears my position." Whispers filled the gallery again. People exchanged shocked looks. Some shook their heads in disbelief. "Did he just outsmart the prosecutor?" One man muttered. The judge looked displeased now, not with the man, but with the prosecutor. "Why did you not present the full law?" he demanded. The prosecutor's voice cracked. "It was a mistake, Your Honor, a minor mistake." The man stepped forward again. "No, it was not a mistake. It was a choice. You wanted to twist the law? You wanted to use your power to silence me? But truth cannot be hidden forever." His words carried a quiet power, and for the first time, the people in the courtroom began to see him differently. He was no longer the poor man without a lawyer. He was a fighter, a thinker, someone who had studied with patience and determination. The prosecutor tried to recover his confidence. "This doesn't change the case," he said quickly. "I still have witnesses. I still have evidence." The man did not flinch. He looked directly at the prosecutor and spoke softly, "Then call them. Let them speak. And we will see if their words hold against the truth." The challenge hung in the air like a heavy weight. The gallery sat in silence, waiting to see what would happen next. The judge sighed, leaning back in his chair. His arrogance from earlier was gone. He no longer laughed. Instead, his eyes studied the man with caution, as if he was reassessing everything he thought he knew. The prosecutor's hands trembled slightly as he prepared his next move. He called out the first witness, hoping to regain control. But deep down, he knew something had changed. This was no longer the easy victory he had imagined. As the witness walked forward, the man closed his folder calmly, his expression unreadable. The tension in the room rose once again. The people in the gallery held their breath, waiting. The judge, the prosecutor. The audience, none of them had expected this. But now, they all knew one truth. The man they had mocked was not a fool. He was not helpless. He was dangerous in a way they had never considered armed, not with wealth or status, but with knowledge and courage. The first twist had arrived, and it would not be the last. The witness stepped forward nervously, adjusting his tie as he took the stand. The prosecutor straightened his shoulders, trying to recover the confidence he had lost. He looked at the judge and said loudly, "Your Honor, this witness will confirm everything. His statement will prove that the defendant is guilty." The judge nodded slowly, though his eyes carried less amusement than before. "Proceed," he said. The prosecutor smiled, thinking he had control again. "Tell the court what you saw," he instructed the witness. The witness cleared his throat. "I saw this man break the agreement. I saw him ignore the law." His voice was shaky, but loud enough for everyone to hear. The prosecutor grinned. "There you have it, Your Honor. Clear testimony." But the black man standing calmly at his table did not react. Instead, he opened his folder once again and pulled out a sheet of paper. His movements were slow, deliberate, and steady. The courtroom fell quiet, waiting for him to speak. He walked toward the witness stand with permission from the judge. His eyes were calm, his tone polite. "Sir," he began softly, Do you remember the day you signed this statement? He lifted the paper for everyone to see. The witness blinked. Yes, I signed it. The man tilted his head slightly. Do you remember who was in the room with you when you signed it? The witness hesitated, shifting in his seat. Well, the prosecutor was there, and was anyone else present? The man asked again, his voice gentle but firm. The witness swallowed. No, it was just him. The man stepped closer, holding another paper. So, no one else can confirm what you were told to sign, correct? The witness looked nervous now. I guess so. The gallery began whispering. The man's questions were simple, but they carried weight. The judge leaned forward, listening carefully. The man placed both documents on the desk before the witness. Here, he said calmly. Compare these two. One is the statement you signed. The other is the original record that I obtained. The witness frowned, his eyes darting between the two papers. His face grew pale. They don't match, he muttered. The courtroom gasped. The prosecutor's face turned red. Objection, he shouted. This is irrelevant. But the judge raised his hand. Overruled. Let him continue. The man's eyes locked on the witness. His voice was calm, but sharp like a blade. So, you admit the statement you signed is not the same as the original record? The witness stammered. I didn't notice. I thought it was correct. The man nodded slowly. You didn't notice because you trusted the prosecutor. You believed him when he told you what to sign? Isn't that true? The witness looked down, shame on his face. Yes. Gasps filled the courtroom again. The gallery erupted into whispers. People turned to each other saying, he's exposing the truth. The prosecutor's hands shook as he slammed the desk. This is nonsense. He's twisting words. But the man remained calm. He turned toward the judge. Your Honor, the so-called evidence has been manipulated. The witness did not lie intentionally. He was misled, and I have the proof. The judge's eyes darkened as he looked at the prosecutor. Is this true? He demanded. The prosecutor stuttered. No, Your Honor, it's just a misunderstanding. The judge cut him off. Silence. Do not insult this court further. The gallery cheered softly, excitement buzzing through the room. The man stepped back, his expression still composed. He did not raise his voice, did not celebrate. He simply returned to his place as if everything was going exactly as he had planned. For the first time, the strategy behind his calmness was revealed. He was not just defending himself, he was dismantling the entire case. Piece by piece, the prosecutor's arrogance cracked even further. His face burned with anger and fear. He knew now that this was not going to be easy. The judge leaned back, silent, his mind racing. He had mocked the man before, but now he could see the truth. This defendant was no ordinary man. He was a strategist, a fighter, someone who turned humiliation into power. The gallery sat stunned, waiting for what would come next. The man had shown only the beginning of his strategy. Everyone now wondered, what else was he hiding? The battle was far from over, but the balance had shifted. The courtroom felt different now. Where once there had been laughter and mockery, there was silence and unease. The people sitting in the gallery no longer whispered jokes about the black man standing alone. Instead, they leaned forward, eyes wide, waiting for what he would do next. The prosecutor tried to regain control. He straightened his shoulders, lifted his chin, and forced a smile. Your Honor, he said loudly, this is only one witness. The case is strong. We still have plenty of evidence. Don't let his little tricks distract the court. But the judge did not laugh this time. His fingers tapped slowly on the bench. His eyes studied the prosecutor carefully, as though he was questioning everything he had been told so far. The man standing at the defendant's table remained calm. He did not raise his voice. He did not look angry. He simply opened another document from his folder. His movements were quiet but powerful, like a storm building far away. The judge finally spoke, his voice heavier now. Show us what you have. The man nodded respectfully and stepped forward. He placed the document before the judge. "This is a record of the original contract," he said clearly. "It proves that the accusations against me are built on half-truths. The prosecutor only chose the parts that worked for him." The judge leaned down, reading carefully. His face grew tense. For a moment, the entire courtroom waited for his reaction. Finally, he looked up, his voice sharp. "Why was this not presented earlier?" The prosecutor froze. He fumbled with his papers. "Your Honor, I thought it was unnecessary detail." The judge's eyebrows lowered. His voice was cold now. "Unnecessary detail? This detail changes the meaning of the entire agreement. Either you were careless, or you deliberately tried to mislead this court." A wave of whispers spread through the gallery. People covered their mouths in shock. The prosecutor's face flushed with embarrassment. The man's calm voice cut through the noise. "Your Honor, the truth has been twisted, but I will not allow it to remain hidden." The judge shifted in his chair. He was no longer smiling. His earlier arrogance, the laughter, the mockery was gone. Instead, his eyes showed a mix of caution and curiosity. The prosecutor, desperate to recover, slammed another file on the desk. "I have other evidence," he shouted. "This man is guilty, and I will prove it." But his voice carried more panic than power. The man turned to him slowly, his calm expression unbroken. "Bring your evidence," he said quietly. "I will answer each point one by one." The challenge hung heavy in the air. The gallery buzzed with excitement. For the first time, people were no longer against the man. They wanted to see what else he could do. The judge leaned back in his chair, silent for a moment. His eyes studied the defendant carefully, as if seeing him for the first time. "You speak with confidence," he finally said. "Where did you learn this?" The man met his gaze without fear. "From the same place every man can learn," he said softly. "Books, truth, and the belief that justice belongs to everyone, not just to those with money and power." The words struck like a spark in the silent room. The gallery murmured in approval. Even the judge sat quietly considering them. The prosecutor clenched his fists, his confidence slipping further. His tricks were not working. His arrogance had turned into desperation. He shuffled his papers quickly, trying to find something that could save him. But the man did not rush. He stood tall, his calm presence unshaken. He had taken the judge's laughter, the prosecutor's arrogance, and the crowd's mockery and turned them into silence, doubt, and respect. The judge, once certain of the outcome, now felt his confidence shaken. He no longer looked at the man as a fool. Instead, he looked at him as a challenger, someone who could not be dismissed so easily. The balance of the courtroom had shifted again. The fight was no longer one-sided. It was now a battle of truth against power. And for the first time, the judge wondered which side would win. The courtroom was tense. The judge, who once laughed at the man, now sat in silence, his eyes sharp and unreadable. The prosecutor's confidence was gone. His hands trembled as he picked up another file. He spoke louder than before, but the tone carried nervousness. "Your Honor," the prosecutor said, "this defendant is trying to confuse the court. But I have solid evidence. I will prove he is guilty beyond doubt." He opened the file with shaking hands, pulling out several documents. His voice cracked slightly as he read. "These records show violations. These records show dishonesty." The judge nodded slowly, but his gaze lingered on the prosecutor with suspicion. The man at the center, however, remained calm. He did not rush. He simply listened, his eyes following every word. Finally, the prosecutor slammed the documents on the desk. "There, clear proof. This man cannot escape now." The gallery murmured again, leaning closer. They waited to see if the defendant could survive this blow. The man stepped forward quietly. He lifted one of the prosecutor's papers, holding it carefully as if it were fragile. He raised his eyes toward the judge. "Your Honor, may I speak?" The judge nodded, his voice low. "Proceed." The man placed the document on the table where everyone could see. His voice was calm but steady. "This evidence looks strong at first glance, but if you read carefully, you will see the truth." He pointed to a small line at the bottom of the page. This record is dated 3 months after the incident, which means it cannot possibly describe what happened that day. It is not a witness of truth. It is a record created later to support a false case. Gasps filled the courtroom. The prosecutor's face turned red. He tried to interrupt. "That's not truth. This is standard procedure." But the man shook his head. "No, standard procedure does not allow rewriting history. And this document is exactly that, a rewrite." The judge leaned forward, examining the paper closely. His lips pressed together. "He is correct," the judge muttered. "The timeline doesn't match." The gallery erupted in whispers. "He caught it again," someone said. "How does he see these things?" The prosecutor panicked, flipping through his papers desperately. "This doesn't change the case. I still have more evidence. It's more witnesses." But every word sounded weaker than before. The man stepped back calmly, his voice cutting through the noise. "Your Honor, I ask only one thing, that the truth be seen. Not half-truths, not twisted stories, not rewritten records. Just the truth." The judge sat in silence, his face stern. He no longer looked amused. He no longer looked dismissive. Instead, he looked as though he was being forced to face something he had not expected. Fairness. The gallery leaned closer, their eyes fixed on the man. Some who had mocked him earlier now whispered with respect. "He's not just defending himself. He's teaching them all." The prosecutor slammed the desk again, his voice rising in frustration. "This is outrageous. He is turning this trial into a performance." The man looked at him with steady eyes. "A performance? No, I am showing what the law truly says. If truth looks like a performance to you, then perhaps you never knew the law at all." The words stung. The gallery gasped loudly. Even the judge's eyes flickered in surprise at the boldness. The prosecutor fell silent, his jaw tight with anger and fear. He had no answer. The judge leaned back, exhaling slowly. He tapped his gavel once, not in anger, but in thought. His voice was heavy when he finally spoke. "This court must consider carefully what has been presented. The case is not as simple as I first believed." The shift was complete. The same courtroom that had mocked the man now sat in awe. The same judge who had laughed at him now weighed his words with respect. The same prosecutor who once smiled with arrogance now trembled with doubt. The court had turned, and in that turn, the man who was once humiliated now stood as the center of strength, forcing everyone to see the truth they had tried so hard to ignore.